All right, guys, welcome back to the Hoops Nerd Show. I'm Hanson James. I wanted to talk today about some of the winners of free agency. Now that free agency has kind of calmed down, I don't think Chris Paul is going to be traded anytime soon. At least that's what Woj and Shams were reporting. So let's take a look a little bit at some of the winners from free agency and who I think really did the best job. Now, before we get into this, there were a lot of teams that did a really good job. There were teams like the Lakers who got Anthony Davis, who, even though it was a big price, that's a big get. But I kind of wanted to talk about teams that actually got someone in free agency or took advantage in free agency of some of the movement around the league. Because I think the Lakers deserve an honorary mention. I think actually Golden State deserves an honorary mention with D'Angelo Russell. Can you tell it's been like a week? I can't talk. Got to keep this muscle strong, even though it's off-season time. But I think those teams did really well, but I don't think they were one of the 5 best off-seasons this season. So to start off, the Oklahoma City Thunder had a really good offseason. And I know people may say, well, how are you talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder? They lost guys. That's the thing. The Oklahoma City Thunder may have actually benefited from losing those guys, because what they did is they turned it into a positive thing. They have more picks than anyone in the league now. They are the reason that the Clippers were able to get Kawhi, but they made sure that the Clippers paid everything they had to do it. And so they get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who was a really nice player for the Clippers. Is it Gilgis or Gilgis? SGA. They got Chris Paul. Well, that's in a separate trade, but they were able to take advantage of both the Rockets and the Clippers, bring over 2 players like Chris Paul, SGA, Danilo Gallinari from the Clippers, who honestly is one of the most underrated players from last season. He might have been the best player on the Clippers quietly last year, and no one talks about it because he has this injury history. People give him a bad time, but if you look at the analytics, the advanced statistics, he was one of the best players in the league. He's like a top 30 player in terms of just his value he brings to the offensive end. He's great. If Danilo Gallinari stays healthy, and SGA develops, and Chris Paul plays at a similar level as he did last season, the Oklahoma City Thunder might be pretty darn good next season. They're able to do some things with that offense that maybe they weren't even able to do last season. Westbrook had a downturn in terms of 3-point percentage and scoring at the rim. Paul George had an MVP-like season for 3/4 of the year, and then he got hurt, and he just kind of fell off. But now they've got a Hall of Fame guard who he's on the downturn now, but he's still a good player. You've got SGA who's going to get better. You've got Danilo Gallinari, Steven Adams. You still have a lot of players like on that team that are going to be really good. Don't be surprised if the Thunder somehow get the 8th seed next year in the Western Conference. They have good players. All right. Next team, and you all know I was going to talk about this team, and maybe I should have put them higher because of my bias, but the Utah Jazz had an incredible offseason, and part of the reason it was so good is because who goes to Utah? No one does. Like, the best free agent signing in Utah history is either Carlos Boozer or Mehmet Okur. And those were just kind of like they lucked into that. And they kind of lucked into Bojan Bogdanovic this year, but that's a straight up signing. And I had heard some things kind of behind closed doors that I'm not able to share, but I don't think the Jazz thought that they were going to be able to get Bojan Bogdanovic straight up like they did. I think the Jazz were willing to make a trade of some sort. They were willing to move some pieces around, maybe things that people aren't completely happy trading, and they didn't have to because they were able to trade for they were able to just sign Bojan Bogdanovic, not trade, sign straight up Bojan Bogdanovic for $73 million. They outbid the Indiana Pacers, who are notoriously pretty stingy in terms of their cap. And by the way, the Pacers had a good offseason as well, but they did lose Bojan replacement. So that's why they're not top 5, is because if you're just replacing a guy that left, I don't know if you're making yourself better as you are just maintaining, which is still good. That's still important, but they didn't add on to what they already have. And that's why the Jazz offseason and free agency was fantastic. Obviously, Mike Conley trade already happened, and then they add to it Bojan Bogdanovic. people don't realize how much this is going to affect the Jazz. They had 2 players that were just kind of a deficit on the offensive end because of the spacing and the shooting. Ricky Rubio and Derek Favors. Derek Favors is a better player than Ricky Rubio and is a very, very good player. He's going to be great for the Pelicans. But on the Jazz, he played power forward, and he's a center, cannot shoot the 3 at a high clip. And Ricky Rubio just couldn't hit open shots this year. His regression was really apparent, and teams just didn't guard Favors and Rubio. So now the Jazz are going to come into the season with Bojan Bogdanovic, who they signed straight up. They were able to get Ed Davis, who's going to back up Rudy Gobert. He's going to fill the role that Derek Favors did in that backup center that he left. And they also signed some other ancillary pieces. I don't think Jeff Green and all them are really moving the needle that much. But Bojan Bogdanovic and Mike Conley are important parts of that offense and going to change things for them. They're going to be fantastic this year. Don't be surprised if the Jazz win 60 games and get the number 1 seed in the regular season, because the Clippers have to rest Paul George for the first month, and the Lakers are probably going to be doing a little bit of load management with LeBron and AD. So it wouldn't be surprising if the Jazz are the number 1 seed in the West. All right, next team that really surprised me, the Philadelphia 76ers, had a great offseason. So I had a feeling that the Sixers were going to just be left high and dry. It was very apparent that there was a possibility that both Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris left them just kind of in the dust. They lost JJ Redick, and so this offseason had a potential to be pretty disastrous for the 76ers. Instead, they're able to take Al Horford from Boston, who looked like he was going to retire there, and they bring him over. I don't know if the fit's perfect, but he does spread the floor. He hits threes at a nice rate. It's typically around 36%. Let me know if I'm wrong. But it's around there. He's a consistent shooter. He's a great defender. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits with Joel Embiid and his ability to play down low and be such a dominant force in the post, and then Al Horford up top. I think in a lot of ways should work. I think he is a little older, so we'll see how he ages. But Al Horford is a ball mover. He makes everyone else on the floor better. He hits threes at a high clip, or at least at an above average clip. And he's an elite level defender. Boston always had an elite level defense, and part of that was because of just Al Horford's ability to guard at the center spot. Philadelphia 76ers fans know firsthand just how good Al Horford is at defense. He's one of the best defenders of Joel Embiid they ever faced. Now he's on their team. The Philadelphia 76ers did great getting Al Horford. And the other thing is re-signing Tobias Harris is a big deal. Re-signing a player is a big deal, guys, because these guys can go anywhere they want. A lot of times things just look like the grass is greener somewhere else. And so these guys will just be willing to bolt. And Jimmy Butler went. It was obvious there was just no real re-signing of him because he just wanted to go elsewhere. And who knows? It could have been coach related. Who knows why? But he wanted to leave. He ends up going to Miami. And they were able to re-sign Tobias Harris for 5 years. And he is a perfect complement to Ben Simmons and to Joel Embiid because he spreads that floor. He will shoot a higher percentage this year because he will get more comfortable in that offense. 43% for the both years he was in LA, and that's just a big time signing for the Clippers. They've got that high level shooting for the next 4 or 5 years. It's great. It's fantastic. He is going to be a perfect complement to them. Spread the floor for Ben Simmons, who just got his big time contract as well. So nice offseason for the Philadelphia 76ers, who I thought were dead in the water and actually did the opposite. And they got better than Boston. I mean, the 76ers might have the best team or probably number 2 beside the Bucks, but overall great. And they have a very real chance to just do as well as they did last year, if not better. I think JJ Redick was a big part of that team, but how much were you really going to want to pay JJ Redick, who is on the downturn? You can't have too many guys on the downturn. So they've got young players in Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, a guy in his prime in Tobias Harris, and then they filled that roster with nice pieces like Al Horford, who will age nicely next to Joel Embiid because at worst, he's a nice defender who can hit threes, and that's really good. Obviously, now we have to talk about probably the 2 teams that everyone knows had the best offseason. The Nets, big time offseason. I think what I love most about the Nets is how they're just going for it, because this is just like the hugest risk reward of any team in the league in terms of offseason. And if it pays off, it's title. But they got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The Brooklyn Nets, who basically mortgaged their entire future and franchise with that trade to Boston now have a legitimate chance to win everything. And having Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving means that they are going to win a lot of games in the Eastern Conference. They are always going to be a top 3 seed once he's healthy. But that's the thing. Can Kevin Durant stay healthy? Can Kyrie Irving, who has a history of knee injuries, stay healthy? Can Kyrie Irving figure it out in terms of the locker room? Because now it's like 2 locker rooms that he hasn't really melded with very well. Things ended badly. But even with the locker room stuff in Boston, which I think is a little overblown, and I think actually you'll find out there's other people in Boston causing problems, that it wasn't just Kyrie. We've heard all the stories about Gordon Hayward and just like his desire to play for that team and him getting preferential treatment when he didn't deserve it. I feel like Kyrie Irving is going to be great in Brooklyn. He's going to have one of his best friends in Kevin Durant, who's going to be great for him. He is going to the talent is just so high level. The talent is so high level with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. You can overcome anything. And I think that's a little bit of what you hear about with Daryl Morey, and the fact that, Daryl Morey doesn't care about chemistry at all. And I think that's a little extreme. He is willing to bring on anybody, Jimmy Butler, into that locker room with Chris Paul and all those guys. Like, that's a little extreme. Chemistry does matter, but the thing that matters most is talent. And if you want to win in this league, you've got to have talent. Talent is the deciding factor to everything. And if you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, 2 top 15 talents in the league on the same team, that makes you a contender. I don't care what team you're in, what city you're in, what the surrounding pieces are. That allows you to win every game you're in the playoffs. Both those guys can get buckets when everything locks down. They have 2 of the best just solo isolation scorers there are in the league, and they're going to be a dominant force in the Eastern Conference. Now, that's the thing we've already mentioned. Can they overcome the risk? Can they stay healthy? Will Kevin Durant, how hurt was Kevin Durant? Can he come back? What percentage of what he was before will he be? Because it was an Achilles, and it's a bad injury, and it's the worst injury you can get in the NBA, and he is a little older. So we'll see how good he is when he comes back. But if he's 85, 90% of what he was, he's still an elite level player, paired off with Kyrie Irving, who's elite level scorer. All the stuff about Kyrie Irving's chemistry issues in Boston, people forget just how good he was this year. His stats were incredible, and he's like the main reason they did what they did and went as far as they did. For all of the locker room stuff, Tatum kind of fell off. Jaylen Brown had like parts of the season where he looked like just incredibly tradable. Al Horford got a little older. He was still solid for them, but Kyrie Irving and Al Horford were the reason that team did what they did. And Kyrie's taking that talent to Brooklyn. We'll see how good he could be. We'll see what he does. Finally, and we all knew who the number 1 offseason was for. It was for the Los Angeles Clippers. They got the biggest fish in the ocean. It's big game hunting in the offseason, and the Los Angeles Clippers got the biggest buffalo, and his name was Kawhi Leonard. And we all waited for days. And I don't know if I talked on here. I wrote about it on SLC Dunk. It was just weird. Why is it taking so long for Kawhi to make his decision? Why is it taking so long? And eventually we find out it's because he was working on getting a trade for Paul George. So the story came out that he had reached out to Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant sounded like he was flattered by that. But I think Kevin Durant really ended up wanting to just go to Brooklyn and pair up with his buddy Kyrie. Kawhi Leonard ended up getting a trade facilitated between Oklahoma City and LA, and now he pairs up with Paul George in LA and creating another just incredible duo. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George is as an elite pairing of wings as we've seen since Jordan and Pippen. It's that good. Now, can the other pieces around them do really well? They do have really nice complementary pieces in Pat Beverly and Montrezl Harrell and other nice pieces on that team that help them go very far. We'll see how good those ancillary pieces hold up in the playoffs, because I don't feel like they're as complementary as you'd want them to be. Like, who is the main ball handler? Lou Williams is a nice player that comes off the bench and scores at a high level, but who's going to be the guy that facilitates to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard? Both of those guys are elite level guys. Both can handle and score But do you want Kawhi Leonard doing the majority of your ball handling? I don't know. He's not the greatest playmaker. He's an elite level scorer, and maybe that's why it doesn't even matter. Maybe all this is meaningless. That you've got Paul George and Kawhi who just get buckets, and in the end, the goal is to get buckets. Is it to look pretty? No, it's to score. And if you score more than the other team, you win the game. Newsflash: if you score more points than the team you're playing against that night, you win the game. Does it matter how they go in? Not really. You know, as long as it works, it works. And so that's why it'll work. They'll figure it out. It'll be fine. Pat Beverly's he's more of a complimentary role player that plays off of guys. He hits threes at a nice high level. Actually, it's pretty surprisingly high level. And then he plays, super hard on defense. They're going to be a rough team to play, but they're going to score. And it's going to be, at times, I think it's going to be a little clunky, but because they're so high level in terms of talent, it doesn't even matter. They're just going to score at an elite level no matter what. So the Kawhi to the Clippers is number one. Easy, obvious choice. Paul George as well joins up with him. It's a little bit of risk because Kawhi has a tiny bit of injury history. Paul George as well with his shoulder. How good will they be? Are they 100% at some point next season? We'll see. But we saw that it didn't really matter with Kawhi in the playoffs. He beat everyone on his own in a lot of ways with the help of nice ancillary pieces. That's why the Clippers should be fine. Anyways, guys, this is the Hoops Nerd Show. Like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're on SLC Dunk Podcast, make sure that you subscribe and rate and review. My name's James Hansen, at Hansen James on Twitter. This is the Hoops Nerd YouTube channel. I will talk to you later.